You're listening to Sirens, a true crime podcast, brought to you by the Sirens Network. This podcast contains explicit content, so listener discretion is advised. The opinions expressed on this podcast are solely the views of the hosts and do not reflect the views of affiliates, associates, or sponsors of this podcast. This is Sirens, a true crime podcast.
I'm Allie Stevens. I'm 22, and I have a 2-year-old, Steele, and then I go to the University of Oklahoma.
And you are a domestic violence survivor.
Yes, I am. So I guess I met Gage in high school, actually. I met him through a dating app, and he was just kind of like a cool friend that I had that I knew. He went to OU. He was older, 6'5", blue eyes, just very attractive, like conventionally attractive. Like, just everyone's kind of like what you think you would see at OU. So I'm like, oh, well, if this is the life at college, I love college. So I go, and we're friends all throughout summer. I'd never met him. He had asked me to like hang out, but I was like, no, like I still felt like a baby at that point. And then I rushed Alpha Chi. Our philanthropy is actually domestic violence, which would end up working out in the end for me. But he walked over on bid day, just kind of randomly. Like, I didn't tell, like, he knew I told him that I was rushing Alpha Chi, but he just kind of walked over and introduced himself to my family. Like, everyone that was there, he was just like, hi, I'm Gage. And I was like, whoa, wow, okay. Yeah, very, very formal. So then he left, he went with his friends, whatever. My family's like, oh my gosh, he's so cute, like all this stuff. Like, he was very, very cute, perfect. Like, so then I had a date party. I didn't really know anyone at OU, so I asked him to go with me to my date party. It was a Barbie date party. Everyone thought, they were like, you guys are Barbie and Ken. Like, that was what it was. And I was like, I just didn't find him, like, attractive in that way. Like, obviously I thought he was very cute, but, like, I just never, like, had feelings for him. And then he kind of just started coming around more and more and more, and I was like, okay, maybe I do like you. Like, so then I think we started dating around, like, October 2019. Things were fine for, I'd say, a month or two. And then he just kind of started getting, like, really controlling. So, like, he would get mad at what I would wear, like, what I was doing with my friends, or if I was going out with my sorority sisters, like, any of that. He always kind of kept me kind of locked away from everything. So that I didn't really make friends in my sorority. So then when I wasn't making friends, like, that was my friend, was him. So I think that's kind of where he wanted to get me, was to not have any friends. And then he would take my phone, would, like, text, and, like, so, like, every sorority and frat, like, freshman group had a chat from everything. He would text really weird things to make me look like I was weird. Like, he would just say weird things, and I'm like, and I can't unsend it, it's in a group me. That was before the unsend thing. So then I really didn't have any friends, because people were like, this girl's weird. And I'm like, I'm not. He is. It's him sending it. So then once he took me home to his family out in Muskogee, Oklahoma, not my scene. So he took me to meet his friends, his family. Wasn't really the biggest fan of his family, but his sister was my age, and she was at OU. So I became really good friends with her, and, like, we were cool. Like, I mean, we were different sororities, so we kind of had different, like, things. So once we kind of started dating, every couple weeks, he would just randomly break up with me, block me on everything, wouldn't talk to me, tell me, like, I'm the worst person ever. And then 2 weeks later, he'd unblock me and be like, I miss you, I want you back. Fell back into it. He wouldn't really alienate me from my family, I wouldn't say. No. I came home a lot because of him, because I didn't... Like, every time he'd break up with me, I'd go home. But friends were where I lacked. The family...
He was pretty savvy with that, because he knew.
Yeah. So he did love bomb me a lot. Like, he would buy me all my favorite things all the time, would get me flowers. Like, I was like, oh my God, this is the life. Just the only problem was he would just always break up with me and block me. I would find him making out with some girl at a frat party. Then he'd be like, well, it's your fault, you weren't here.
That's part of
But
that.
he wasn't as emotionally abusive as people would think, because I stood up for myself to him. That was one thing I did do, and I think that caused a really big thing with him.
And then he got mad.
He would get mad at me. And so, because I've not always been like that. I'm just very, nope, you don't say that to me. But there were a lot of things he did say that I would actually believe. Like, he was the first person to actually be able to get in my head and make me think wow, am I actually the problem? So, because I'd always been very strong in all my relationships, anything, I just knew what I wanted. I knew how you don't treat me. But I get to college, obviously it's a new scene, so I'm he's telling me he's older than me. He's I know more than you. So then I would say Christmas, he was with my family, brought him to my big family thing. I went to his, did everything, and then his birthday rolls around. It was his 21st birthday. I threw him this whole big thing. He wanted to go to Muskogee to celebrate his 21st. I'm why would you want to go celebrate it there? All your friends are in Norman, why would you? But that's what we did. So I went to my little sister's birthday party, went for a little bit, then I left because I was so encompassed on making his birthday better. So I threw him this whole big thing, and then my birthday was the week after. He broke up with me on my birthday. Didn't tell me happy birthday, just blocked me on my birthday. Then he bought me a puppy. Yeah, very bipolar. Wow. So broke up with me on my birthday, buys me a puppy. Buys me a puppy. Okay, the puppy's not trained. I mean, it is this tiny little fluff ball. I mean, it was the cutest thing I've ever seen in my life. I loved him. He lived in a frat house at this point. So he was oh, he can stay at the frat house. The puppy went to the bathroom on the floor one time. That was my fault. So that was kind of the first time that things kind of started really getting abusive, screaming at me, all this stuff. And then I think maybe the next day he threw out all my stuff out of a window. And so my friend Sarah at the time had to come pick me up from his house because I didn't want to call my mom. I was embarrassed. I'm because obviously my family told me obviously it's hard to tell a 19-year-old girl that you don't think her 6'5" attractive boyfriend who she loves is treating you bad. And I just didn't see it. I knew in the back of my head that he was being very controlling and this isn't what love was, but he just would continuously come back and be able to make me believe that that was never going to happen again. So he came from abuse. His dad was very abusive towards his mom, him, not really his sister or his older brother. It was mainly, he was the youngest, or the middle child. He was supposed to pretty much provide for the family. That's what his dad saw him as. So he got taken away, I think, by CPS when he was 9 or 10, and then he got put with his grandma. So she raised him for a little bit. Well, then they won him back. His mom had, what did we see, 10 reports on his dad. They had filed for divorce. She had filed a VPO against him, all these things. He had told me all these sad stories about his dad, and that's why he lashed out at me, because he didn't know what love was because he watched his parents grow up like that. So that was his excuse towards me, and I believed him. I mean, he did have scars on his back from what his dad did to him. Visible scars, would not let me touch them. They were... So I took that seriously, but then he would just turn around and kind of act, mimic his dad towards me. So I would see that, but then I'd be well, his dad did it to his mom, so maybe that's all he knows. He just need, I can change him, I can help him. That was just my thought process.
The truth, because he was telling you the truth.
Yeah.
He's almost using that as an excuse to get away.
It will always be his excuse.
And
as if we don't have to break the cycle or something.
Yeah.
And that's normally what domestic abusers, especially intimate partner violence,
Yeah.
They use the truth and they twist it.
Yeah.
Because then if it comes back around to them, well, they're not lying.
Yeah.
But they twist it to their own reality.
Yeah.
To make themselves look good in every situation.
Yeah. So the first event that really got physical, I don't really remember what month it was, but he had kicked me off the bed and I'd fallen back and hit my head. Well, someone heard it in the frat house. And so it had kind of started going around. I yelled for help. Like, I was like, get him away from me. He ran out. The president heard about it. Well, by that time, Gage had left. He called me maybe 2 days later and was like, I'm about to get kicked on my frat. You better go tell the president you were lying. So he convinced me to lie to the president. The president knew I wasn't lying, but he was like, okay. Like, I mean, there was no proof besides what I'm saying, what Gage is saying. So, I mean, they couldn't just kick him out over, because he could go for wrongful, whatever, getting kicked out. So I think that was like kind of like our longer breakup. And then I started going back. And he locked me in a closet one time, like shut the lights off. Like, I was in that closet for a very long time. He like slid a cracker under the door and was like, if you're good, like, you can come out. And I was like, okay. Summer rolls around. We're kind of like back and forth between, like, he's coming to Norman, I'm going there. But most of the time I was there. He wouldn't come down here. Yes, I always had to go up there.
Quite a little, I mean,
Yeah, it was like a good 2-hour drive. Yeah. So I think probably the most memorable time, his dad was home and we were in the bathroom and he had squatted down to get something and I was brushing my teeth while I turned around and I accidentally like elbowed him. Like, I was just like turning around like I did it. Well, that completely set him over the edge. I saw his dad sitting in the room. He was just laying on the bed. Gage had picked me up and he threw me to the ground and he kicked me and then he spit on me, called me every name in the book, and his dad did nothing. I like sat there crying. I didn't know what to do. Like, I was just like, I was 2 hours away from home. Like, there was just no way. So then, you know, he leaves, he comes back. Hour later, he's apologizing. He's like, I'm so sorry. Like, I should have never done that to you. That's not how I treat you. So then we go and get snow cones, I think. And we started arguing on the way back to his house. And so I got out of the car. We're still arguing. He dumps a red snow cone in my hair. And then he chases me through the backyard. He pushes me to the ground. His dog, he had this fat dog. I mean, like 160-pound lab, chocolate lab. I mean, that thing was so overweight. The dog jumped on me because Gage made it sound like I was doing something. But his mom walked out, found me on the ground. He had thrown my keys, like he had a big yard. He had thrown my keys, and his mom was like, oh, what happened? I was like, your son happened. And she was like, I think you should leave. And I was like, maybe you guys should take control of your son. So that was the last time I ever went to Muskogee. So then...
How long had you been together?
October, so about a year at that point, almost.
And his mom would make excuses.
Oh, yeah, all the time. I mean, I would tell her things, and she'd be like, that's just how he is. That's just Gage. She never did anything to show her kids that that's not right. Like, she continuously makes excuses for Gage, for everything that he did to me, to anybody, to what his dad did. Like, it's just how they are. It's just how they're wired, is her thing. She blamed me for it. I mean, I was always the problem. She was an at-home nurse. So when his mom was off drugs and she would kind of more in public, she was a lot nicer to me. She would do anything for me, like, and then she would get home and she'd be just a completely different person. It's because she's so scared of his dad. And they're all scared of his dad. Well, then around that time, I was over, and this was before that whole incident, before I never went back, but he had gotten contacted. You guys know the show Love Island? Mm-hmm, yeah. He had gotten contacted by Love Island, told them he was single. He was like, hey, can you leave my room? I got to do this interview for school. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. It's on Zoom. And I was like, yeah, I'll leave. So I go to the bathroom while I hear him talking. He's like, oh, yeah, I don't party. I don't do drugs. I don't have a girlfriend. And I'm like, well, what kind of class are you in? So I waited till it was over, and I came back in, and he was like, oh, yeah, like, I'm going to go on Love Island. And I was like, okay, we're dating. And he was like, yeah, you're going to be like the hometown story. And I'm like, I don't want to be the hometown girlfriend that gets clowned by the whole world because you want to go on Love Island. He apparently passed the mental evaluation, and then he had to get like an STD testing. Turns out he had something because he had slept with 4 girls in one night and then gave it to me. So it was just like one of the, you take like a pill for it and it's gone. But I was like, you cheated on me. And he was like, well, I guess, like, it's not really that big of a deal. Like, and I was like, and then he started blaming me, saying I gave it to him. And I'm like, I'm at your house 24/7. You are the one that runs around, goes out to parties, doesn't let me come. Like, you'll turn off your location. You'll tell me, like, you'll block me just so you can go sleep with other girls. We broke up officially, like, really broken up, I think, like, July. Like, late July. Because I had gone for the 4th of July, like, down there with, like, his friends and stuff. And then, yeah. So then we break up, like, officially, like, we didn't get back together after this point, like, into July. So then on August 25th, my dad dies. I also had a doctor's appointment scheduled that morning because I'm really prone to cysts. I just did not feel good. Like, I just knew there was something wrong. So I asked my mom, I'm like, should I still go to the doctor's appointment? Because my dad died around like 3 a.m. My doctor's appointment was at 9 a.m. So I'm like, do I still go? And she was like, yeah, just go. Just like figure it out. Like, everyone's still going to be here when when you get back. So I go to the doctor's appointment and I find out I'm pregnant. And I'm like, oh, God. So I start bawling. And my doctor who birthed me and my little sister, he was like, are you crying because you're pregnant? And I was like, no, I'm crying because I lost my dad this morning. So it was like this 5-hour span of losing my dad, finding out I'm pregnant, and the worst part of it is I know it's Gage's. And I'm like, and at the hospital I was at, they wouldn't even give me the talk of you have a choice. Like, it was a very, Catholic? Is that what they are? Mm-hmm. They were a very Catholic hospital. So I didn't even get to tell them that if I had a choice, that I would want to talk about what would go into it, what I wanted to do. So I just go home. Well, obviously, my mom just lost her husband. I'm not going to go, oh, by the way, I'm pregnant with Gage's baby at 19 years old. So I kept it to myself for till after his funeral. Like, that's just not something I wanted to spring on anybody. So I called Gage that day and I'm like, my dad died. And he's like, okay, like, I don't care. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm also pregnant with your baby. And he's like, no, you're not, you're lying. And I'm like, no, I'm pregnant, I have the ultrasounds. He was like, okay, like, come over, like, we'll talk about it. He lived in Norman. He moved back to Norman at this point. So I bring him the ultrasounds. He was like, yeah, like, I'm just in my room, like, you can come in. I go, he's in bed with another girl. Full well knowing I was gonna walk into it. He just wanted to make sure I knew that. So I immediately left. His roommate's like, get the fuck out. Like, you're not supposed to be here. Like, we all hate you, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm pregnant. And he's like, no, you're not. He told me that I bought the ultrasound pictures off of Amazon. My name on it, everything. I mean, you can't fake. Yeah.
From what people like this will do, and so they think that other people will do it to them.
I mean, obviously, she wasn't over the moon. One, her 19-year-old daughter's pregnant, but more because it's Gage's. Because I knew she was going to be there for me no matter what. Like, I knew my mom was never going to kick me out over it. Like, but I made sure her best friend was there. That way she could be there. That way someone could see if she did, like, freak out. I had people there. I had told my sister before I told my mom. She was, like, sitting in my car, and, like, it was just, like, an awkward silence. And I was just like, I'm pregnant. And she was like, huh? And I was like, yeah, just open up the glove box. You'll find them. This little tiny bean inside me. I was like maybe like 7 weeks when I found out. So Gage then started seeing other girls. Like, I just knew it. So in my car, what happened? My tire went flat. Remember, we had to go, or my engine. Something was wrong with my engine. It was the Mazda. Something's wrong with my engine. We had to jump my car. And I saw a car I knew. I'm not going to say her name. But I did see a car I knew. So I was like, well, I'm done. Like, that was, I don't know why, just like seeing that car there, like, I just knew someone was in his room. And he knew I was pregnant. He didn't want to believe it. He knew my dad had just died. So I took his key that I had in my car, and I think I had like a pair of shorts and some mail, dropped off his front door. I texted his roommate, and I'm like, Gage can get his stuff off the front porch, like I'm done. He had called me, and he was like, please come over, like I just want to talk, like I just want to know. So I go, and we had an okay night, but not really. His mom had found out that we were hanging out. She texted me, and she was like, if someone gets hurt in the process, like, whose fault is it? Like, saying pretty much, Allie, it's your fault. Like, if you get hurt, like, I can't control Gage anymore. So he had been drinking. Well, his friend, I'm not going to say any names. His friend, who later goes on to save my life, was in the room. Gage just started saying all these things to me, like, all these horrible things. And his friend's like, whoa. And at the time, I was best friends with his roommate's girlfriend. So he was like, dude, you don't talk to your girlfriend like that. Like, stop. Like, he was like, she's the problem. Like, I hate her. She's ugly. There's so many girls that are better than her. All this stuff. And I'm sitting there crying. And so they're drunk. I'm sober because I'm pregnant. And they're like, just drink. And I'm like, what? No, I'm not going to drink. And Gage is like, you're not even going to keep it anyways. And I'm like, you don't know that. I'm like, I sure don't want to keep it with you. So, like, we're going back and forth, whatever. I just go to bed. So I go to bed, and then the next morning, I had texted, I think maybe my mom or someone, I texted something about Gage, and he was very, very open to getting on my phone. So I changed the password. My mistake. I changed the password. I had just a t-shirt and underwear on. I would think I was getting ready to leave, and he threw me to the bed and punched me in the eye because I had changed my password. So I just grabbed everything I could and I just ran out.
And you had been apart for months.
Yeah. So about a month, I think.
Just jumped right back in there.
Yeah. So, yeah, August to October. So that's the first incident. I call my mom. My eye, like, you can just see, like, it's starting to bruise up. I have no pants on. I'm like, well, I can't go to the police station right now. I don't have pants on. My mom's like, just come home, drop off your stuff. You can go and make a report. So I go, I make a report. That assault against a pregnant woman was misdemeanor. So they were like, he just has to come to court. So his mom's calling me, and she's like, you need to go get him from jail, blah, 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 all this stuff. She's like, you got to pay for his bail. So I do. I pay for his bail, and I sit outside the jail for, 10 hours? Wait for him to come out. Don't know why. I mean, now that I look back at it, I'm like, Allie, come on. But I was so I wanted the fairy tale. I wanted him to be the father of my child. I wanted him to be there. I wanted just everything with him because I didn't want to be alone as a 19-year-old mom. I'd gone to court with him after he got out of jail, and the judge lowered his bond to $2,500. So this was before, obviously, I went and picked him up from jail. Kind of got twisted up right there. But the judge looked at me, and he was like, are you safe? And Gage is standing right there. And I was like, yeah. So then they take him out, and he's like, are you actually safe? And I'm like, do I look safe? And he was like, yeah, I don't know. And I'm like, okay. So that's when I go bail him out of jail. His mom's calling me, texting me. She's like, I hope my baby's okay. He's so traumatized right now. He keeps calling me. And I'm like, oh, he is traumatized. I have a black eye from your son. This isn't the first time I know this, like I just knew. So then I had to sit there and pretty much take care of him for 3 days because he was hiding under his bed. Because he was just under his bed because he was so traumatized from being in Cleveland County Jail. I'm like, dude, that's where drug dealers go. You're fine. There's not murderers in there. 2 hours. Yeah, you were in there. But he was so traumatized. So I'm thinking, I'm like, God.
That was a grand scheme there.
So then, I'm thinking, I'm like, well, maybe he went to jail once. I'm like, maybe he won't hurt me again because he knows I'm serious, that I will press charges against him. So after that, we just kind of stopped talking, but we're kind of talking, but not really. So then I see on Snapchat he's out at the bars. So this was, October 16th. So this is the day that everything happened. I'm with a group of girls. One of the girls I was with is actually the girl that he had been sleeping with. I did not know that at the time until we kind of started talking. I was like, oh, yeah, like I'm pregnant, like Gage Ford. She was like, no, I've been sleeping with him. And I'm like, well, I've been involved with him, and he gave me a black eye like a week ago. She was like, well, he told me that, like, that was all your fault. And I'm like, okay. Yep. Oh, it gets better. So we go out that night, and I had seen his friends all at Logie. So I was obviously DD. So he hears I'm out. So he starts texting me, and he's like, come save me. I'm going to kill myself if you don't come over. Then he would block me. Then he would unblock me, and he'd call me over and over, and he's like, get pizza. Like, I just want to hang out with you. Like, I just want to see you. I'm going to kill myself if you don't come over. Just like all these antics.
Control.
He always felt like the world was against him. That was, he was going to be kicked out of all these things if I didn't come get him. So I found this text. My name in his phone was Living Hell because, yeah. So he would text me and be like, if you come to my house, I love you. I unblocked you. Like, save me. So I texted him, I'm like, where are you? And he's like, fuck off, demon. Then text me, call me on star 67, and I'm probably going to hell for talking to you, but it's fine. I need a face mask right now. Fuck our drama and get pizza. Get me pizza. That was all together. That was all once before I could even open up the message. And I was like, where are you? He texted me, he was like, you're from hell. I'm dying. And I'm like, okay. No, you, Allie, you're so bad. And then I guess he had told that girl that he loved her. And I'm like, you told someone else that you loved her. And he was like, I love everybody, Allie. I was out here to love them. That was his thing. He was apparently out here to save everybody. He was like, you're so selfish. Bury me if you want. Fuck, I can't love people. I'm walking home. Call me right now. And I was like, where are you? He said, dead. You want Gage dead. And he was like, bury me. I get it. I know what you want. And I was like, you cheated on me. He was like, oh, Allie, cool. Don't care. Bury me. And I'm like, come back to where I am and I will take you home. He's like, no, I hate you so much. You killed me on the inside. I'm so fucked up. I hate being alive. I told you I couldn't take any more heartbreak and you wanted me dead. Then he kept calling me and then just started kind of just going on rambles like that. Just like consistent, I love you, but I hate you. You want me to die, but I'm not going to die. So he does end up going home. So the girl that I was with was dating the roommate, and I was like, if I'm going there, you're coming to the apartment with me. So she comes with me. So they let me in, whatever. I go in, and Gage immediately goes and shuts the door and locks it. And I'm like, why are you locking it? Like, I'm not staying here. I don't want to sleep here. And I told my friend that. So turns out she was a freshman at OU at that point. So she was a year younger than me. She had gone back to her dorm to get clothes to stay the night with her boyfriend. He was like, take off your clothes, like just like put on a t-shirt, like just get into bed. So like laying there talking, and he's just like rambling, but it's like scaring me. Like something in me is just like, get up, like get up. So I take off my t-shirt and I put back on the clothes I had on. And I texted my friend, like, as a voice text because I knew I couldn't get it out. So I texted him, like, you need to come get me right now. I was like, I just have a feeling something bad's going to happen, like, whatever. So I'd known the door was locked, but I was, like, facing the corner. And then next thing I know, he had grabbed me by my hair. He took me to the ground, and he started punching me in the face. Just, like, over and over and over, telling me he wanted me to die, all this stuff. He's, like, punch me in the stomach, and then I black out. I go completely out of it. I have no idea. I mean, what did they try saying? Like 20, 30 minutes? Strangled me, I wake up and he's standing over me, just like staring at me. And he's like crying and he's like, I love you, like I'm sorry. And I'm like I was so confused. Obviously I was so out of whack. I'm like,
probably didn't even feel anything.
No. I felt the first couple things and then I was out. So I realized I was on the ground, so I went and touched my face, and there was blood all over my hands, and I'm like, oh my God. So just in that moment, I just had this adrenaline rush. I got up, I unlocked the door, and I ran down the hallway to where I knew that my friend was and her boyfriend, his room. I run in there, and he's like, why do you look like that? And I'm like, Gage. And he's like, you look like you've been in a car accident. Where were you? And I'm like, Gage did this. That's all I could say. I pass out again. So his friend picks me up off the ground. He's got two friends with him, and he picks me up. I like wake up in the middle of it. He is banging on his other roommate's door. There were 4 roommates at the time. One of them absolutely hated me, did not care if I lived or died. He was right next door. But they had been drinking that night, all very blackout. So I'm not sure if they heard me scream. I'll never actually know the truth. They say they didn't. I think one of them did, which is the guy that hated me. I don't think he cared. I never will to this day. Like, he's one of those people that I'm like, you would do this to someone if you could. Like, he was just so in love with Gage, like in a weird way, that I was like, I'm not your biggest fan either. He's banging on the door. He's telling them what happened. Gage had ran downstairs, and because he thought I'd ran out the door. He had no idea I went to the other room, and I'm sitting there. I'm like looking at Hayden. I'm like, I need my phone, like phone, wallet. Like, I'm just like spouting out anything I could think of that is in that room because I do not want to go back in there. He goes in there. He sees blood all over the wall, blood all over like the carpet, and then I just continuously like keep like passing out. Coming back up, and he's like, dude, we got to get her to the hospital. And they're like, no, you need to call 911. And they're like, no, that's going to take too long. You need to get her to the hospital now. And that's all I remember. I wake up in the hospital. My mom was Kansas City? Tulsa. My mom's in Tulsa. Obviously, my dad's not here. My sister's with my mom. So my mom gets a call from 2 random girls she doesn't know and was like, your daughter's been severely beaten by her boyfriend. She's in the hospital. So yeah, baby's okay though. So I guess I had ran in and shut the door because I didn't want him to see me, but I think he was so like out of what he just did that like he didn't hear me shut the door. He didn't see me run. But I do remember him just standing there like just staring at me. Like even after I'd got up and ran out, he came back into the apartment and was just standing there staring at me, and his friend is like screaming at him like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, if I didn't have to take her to the hospital right now, you'd be dead. Like, well, I think he thought I was dead. He runs immediately, starts driving to Muskogee. I mean, but then he left his phone. I figured that out. He left his phone. He takes off, runs without anything, just whatever's on his back in his car. So I'm in the hospital. Cops are coming in, like questioning me, marking off his room, like crime scene, like trying to ask me what happened. I'm like, I don't know. Like, at that point, I'm like, I don't know. I just know my face is swelling up, and I'm about to, I could just tell that my eyes were about to swell up. So, because of COVID, they couldn't keep me in to monitor me, nothing. So, I went home that night.
Rick Rollins is my husband. He is also a critical care paramedic with ropes training and a lot of other specializations, and sees a lot of domestic violence.
What was it, last year, year before last, they did up one of the domestic violence charges to a felony. I think it was the strangulation one.
I want to say that was it.
I think that's the one that they upped to.
I'd have to look to make sure, but I'm almost certain that it was any...
that it was...
You know, it's funny that you bring that up because that's one of the questions that they ask in the domestic abuse scenarios.
Yeah.
Is, has he ever choked you?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, because now it's a felony, bro. So, and that only happened, I want to say, in the last year in Oklahoma.
A person commits the offense of strangulation if he knowingly or intentionally impedes the breathing or circulation of the blood of another person by applying pressure on the throat or neck. So, it is a Class E felony that will be tacked on to a misdemeanor domestic assault charge.
Okay, so...
Thanks, jsberrylaw.com.
We talk about strangulation kind of a lot for some reason.
It's quite a bit, more than you want, I think.
All right, so I have Deb Campbell here. She's a SANE nurse, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
My name is Deborah Campbell. I'm a registered nurse. 1979 was when I became a nurse, and it was in 2003 that I took some training to become a sexual assault nurse examiner, which we call them SANEs. And then in 2005, I took the training to become a domestic violence nurse examiner. 2016, I was able to go to the Strangulation Institute in San Diego, California, and a week-long training on strangulation. At the moment, I do a lot of training with law enforcement, healthcare workers, social workers, caseworkers, really anybody who will listen about sexual assault, domestic violence, and strangulation. I also do a lead SANE. I take care of a program, and I do exams both for sexual assault and domestic violence.
You said you specialized in strangulation. So let me ask you, how do you determine if someone was strangled while you're doing your exams?
Well, that's just part of the screening when I'm doing the sexual assault exam. I always screen them for strangulation because it does happen. There are certain things that I will ask as far as like, do you normally talk this way? Is your voice any different right now? I ask them how they were strangled. I have a mannequin head that I have. I ask, show me how they were strangled. I take pictures and everything. I assess their neck and everything. Their eyes, look for petechiae, which is little red spots. Petechiae can happen, to a lot of people, like women that are pregnant, that are trying to have the baby, that pressure, they can have petechiae all through the body. But when we're specifically talking about strangulation, it's from where the grip was, the ligature, the hands or whatever, from there up, like from the neck up.
But my question to you, because as the SANE nurse, she doesn't see it until later. She's not the first one that sees it. So,
some of these perpetrators some of these guys that are assaulting these women, this is not even their third rodeo.
Yeah.
And they are very well versed in how to hide what they've done. We had a guy that we picked up that, and this is going to blow your mind, but he had been strangling his wife simply because she had rosacea on her neck. And she knew he would choke her until she almost passed out.
Like manually with his hands?
With his hands, because he knew that I wouldn't be able to find anything under all that irritated and ablaze skin.
But he not at least leaving, like, bruises? Or
I happened to notice, because where she would get it is like the neckline of a T-shirt.
Yeah.
So she would never wear low-cut shirts or crew neck shirts or V-neck shirts or anything like that because she didn't want you to see it.
Right.
So she would wear her little T-shirt up here, and she would buy them a little bit smaller than normal so that they would kind of suck up around her neck a little bit. And he would grab right there. Well, the particular day that he attempted to assert his dominance over her, and they called me, of course, he would always... These manipulators like this guy, when you get there, they're like, man, they gaslight. They say, oh, she's crazy. No, I would never choke her. That's rosacea. Like, she's out of hand. Whatever. All right. It was a good day for her rosacea.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad of a breakout. It wasn't as big as he's used to it being.
Right.
And I saw a very clear fingerprint. Like a very clear finger contused on the edge of it. I pointed out to the officer. He took a photograph. He came in. Dang. So they told him, we think that you did it. We found a bruise on her neck.
We'll see.
We have her written statement. Place your hands behind your back, please.
These guys, they get very good at it. They get very good at what they do.
It's not just that.
Manipulation.
Yeah, that's the bit.
Yeah.
They know exactly what happens next.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing a lot of out in the streets when we come to these 911 calls. Of course, they're not still going to be punching each other in the face when we show up. That part's done.
Yeah.
And they know exactly what we're there to look at.
Right.
And they know exactly what questions we're going to ask.
But I mean, so that's manual strangulation, but you can for sure tell when they're like ligature marks.
Yes, ligature marks are very clear and concise.
And ligature marks are...
a ligature mark is technically...
Just for the listeners.
Just for the listener. It's where you don't use your hands, you use literally anything else.
Any kind of object, a string, a belt, a seat belt, an
extension cord, a piece of piano wire, anything that you could think of. I mean, it could span...
Extension cords are used a lot.
Extension cords are used a lot. Extension cords are used quite a bit.
Yeah.
The one that you probably wouldn't think about that leaves a clearly defined line is a belt. A belt.
Because it's so thick?
It is. It doesn't have any holes in it, so it's difficult to... I mean, it does, but that's not the part they're strangling you with, right?
Right.
But that's the bit that we can always tell the person who's been strangled with the belt versus the person who did the strangling with the belt.
Yeah.
Those are the easiest to identify because they grab the buckle and they grab the part with the holes.
Okay, so that reminds me of the Debbie Carter case, because she was strangled with her own belt.
That's correct.
But there wasn't very, like the markings weren't
I will
obvious.
say as a paramedic that lividity shows all.
Yeah, but that is the issue. Is that they have to be dead for you to figure out what happened.
It's true.
Yeah.
But lividity shows everything. You cannot hide from the lividity of a human corpse. It will tell you the entire story of that attack from beginning to end. You can't hide from it.
And just for the listeners, explain.
Lividity is a skin sign that is usually dark blue, purple, or black that appears on the human body after death at the location where blood pools or recent trauma has occurred.
Right.
So if he strangles her with a flat, wide belt and that kills her, and then he takes the belt out from under grandma while she's face down or whatever, and walks out of the room, when we come in, all the bruise that happened from the belt is the first place that blood will turn black.
Yeah.
So now it's really easy to see. It's that right there. That did it. So lividity hides nothing.
Yeah.
So you can always tell a ligature mark right away.
We have Carrie White on with us today. She is an attorney. She is a domestic violence expert and a strangulation expert.
Deb was talking about the strangulation, and I just wanted to clarify that, you know, a lot of people, a lot of patients of Deb's patients or victims will tell the police or tell the doctors that they were choked out. That is strangulation. Yeah. If someone puts their hand around your neck, that is strangulation. And whether you passed out or not, it doesn't matter. It's strangulation. Mm-hmm. When anyone tries to control you with their hand around your throat, it is strangulation, because it only takes a little bit of pressure to strangle someone. You can put your thumb on your carotid artery, and if you hold it there for 15 seconds, you will pass out. So, I mean, that's just enough to open a can of pop.
Yeah.
That's how much pressure that it takes to strangle someone. And the aftermath of strangulation is memory loss. Once somebody is strangled, they start having a lot of residual symptoms. Memory loss, depression, anxiety. I mean, a lot of things can be associated with strangulation. And the statistics show that once your partner strangles you, he will continue to use that as a method of fear and control. Yeah. He will continue to do that. The statistics say that once you are strangled, if you stay with that partner, you are 800 times more likely to be killed by that partner than in any other kind of domestic violence. So once that perpetrator strangles you and figures out that that is the method of control that works for you, he's going to continue to do it. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse every time until you are dead. So get out of a relationship that, you are involved in domestic violence, especially if there's strangulation involved. It is so easy. You do not have to cut off people's air to strangle them. That is not even close to what you have to do. You can simply place your hand on your two arteries on the sides of your neck for 15 seconds, and if you push hard enough, you will pass out.
Why are there strangulation devices like that if it's so easy to do?
I have no idea. I think because some people just like the violence.
Yeah. That explains a lot.
The people who use it as a form of control know how to do it. They don't need those devices.
And so I go home. The group of girls that I was with had found out what happened to me. They were all waiting at my house. There was a guy there. Well, they'd gotten to my house obviously before me, but they were waiting outside because, I don't know why they were just waiting outside for me. Well, my front door was wide open. And so I've never been able to prove it, but I do believe that Gage broke into my house before he ran further. Because there's a big old hole in our door. The door was wide open. Luckily, I had another big old guy that was with us, and I was like, I'm not going in that house until you search it. He goes and searches the house. We call the cops again. They're looking at me like, oh my God, you look like crap. Like, what happened? My hair's in horrible mats in the back. Like, it had, like, completely, like, the whole back of my hair is like this, like, together just by blood. They did take pictures of me that night. Well, then it obviously caught wind very, very fast throughout Norman. Everyone starts posting about it. I can't see my phone, but everyone is like, it's just buzzing everywhere. Social media, Instagram,
It was everywhere. Yeah.
Facebook. I mean, anything that you could think of, my face was there. So I'm like, when I can finally a little bit open up my eyes, I get on Instagram. I had gained like 6,000 followers. News outlets are posting about it. They're like, we have no things on it. But I had to go to the courthouse. So my mom took me to the courthouse so I could get this emergency VPO done. They still could not find him. I had no idea where he was. I'm obviously terrified for my life every night because I'm like, he knows where I live. Like, how do I know he's not going to come back? So my mom had not even taken her car. That was the worst part. She didn't take her car. So she had to take someone else's car, one of her friend's cars, just to get back to me because my sister had a dance competition that weekend. And so she came back, but my grandparents were the first people to see me, my Mimi and Papa. That was the last people I wanted to see me like that. Like, that just, like, broke my heart because I'm like, oh, my God, they just saw their granddaughter like that. My friends are, like, obviously coming in and waking me up every hour, like if I'd fallen asleep, making sure, like, I'm not going out because they knew I obviously had a concussion.
Thank goodness for your friends.
Yeah. So my Mimi and Papa watched me until my mom got home. And then my mom had to take me to the courthouse the next day. I don't really remember going, but because I was so swollen, I could not see, I could not open up my eyes. I just knew what was going on around me.
She just had to hold that arm.
Yeah, I was holding her arm. And so I guess everyone in the courthouse went like this. Like, no one said a word, nothing. Like, they just let me walk through. The judge got me in. He did not care to make me wait. He was like, nope, I'm going to sign this immediately. I just needed you to sign it, whatever, you can go.
Was that a different judge?
Yes, yes. I love this judge. Great guy. So then Hales is the guy that signed off my VPO. Great guy. If I ever see him again, I'll probably give him the biggest hug. After that, obviously, it's buzzing off the walls. I mean, every sorority frat house, next thing I know, my face and name is up on every single sorority's frat house. Everything. Like, I have thousands of messages. My Facebook's blowing up. My Snapchat's blowing up. Comments all over my pictures. Like, I mean, I probably have like 2,000 plus comments on like a lot of my pictures because people were just like trying to get a hold of me in that way. And my sorority had posted about it, started to GoFundMe. Well, it raised $55,000 because every Alpha Chi in the United States posted something about it. Then domestic violence people started posting about it. And then Survivor started posting it. And then I started getting messages from Russia, China, all these places. And I'm just like, I'm so overwhelmed at this point because I'm still very swollen, very bruised. I'm like, oh my God, if my face never goes back, I'm gonna be mad. My hair took a week to get out of the mats. I couldn't wash it. We tried horse mane stuff because water, conditioner, nothing was getting it out. I thought I was gonna have to chop off all my hair. But my friends made this concoction with frozen spray, that like the movie Frozen, the things you use on children detangler. That, some conditioner and some hot water, put it on my hair. They slowly started getting the mats out. But my head hurt so bad it didn't feel like anything. Like, I didn't know. Like, I just knew that they were just like trying to get it out. They were like, your hair's going to stain blood, like red. One police officer said that he thought I had colored my hair red for Halloween because of how much blood was in my hair. It was one of the guys who actually came in and testified for me. Then Gage starts dating the same girl after all of this happened.
The one with the car?
The one with the car. She was there that night with me. She was at my house. She saw what I looked like. She blamed me. She dated him anyways. Wow. She blamed me for it. She knew where he was hiding out. He was hiding out in some Tulsa hotel. His brother was also...
And abetting is what that's called.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. His brother was also a police officer. Did nothing about it. Yeah.
Wow.
For Tulsa. He's not anymore. So, I mean, obviously his sister's at OU. Obviously her brother's getting blasted, but somehow it's my fault. She starts showing up to court with all her and her friends supporting him, and I'm like, okay, you're embarrassing. Yeah. So the first court date was probably the biggest one. Well, obviously besides trial, but that's the same girl who was at my house who was sitting there crying on my couch because of what he did to me, came to court with him. Walked out flipping me off, was like, this is your fault, we're going to prove he's innocent, was all over Twitter saying, she was like, you have no idea what this girl did to him, like, it was all her, like, she probably deserved it. The truth will come out. The judge you saw what you did to her. Like, nothing will ever...
No.
And obviously, I had this mindset where I was like, this is my fault. If I would have just, I mean, obviously, there were some little thrown in haters in there, like, this is your fault, you should have just never gone back, why did you go back? And I'm like, I don't care. I could go back as many times, that should still never happen.
No, it does not matter. No
Yeah.
one should ever lay a hand on anyone else.
Yeah,
It does not matter.
So in that week probably 2 weeks that I was very bruised up, Forensic had contacted me, Forensic Photos, photographer, and they had asked if they could take pictures of me because they were like, we need to know what's on the inside. So that's where they were able to prove the strangulation. You could see that my neck, like all around it in a very specific spot, was bruised. You could tell that he had choked me. Yeah, I had bruising all behind my ears, which also proved that he had strangled me. My eyes were like completely like bloodshot. Like, yes, yeah. My nose, like I was just bleeding everywhere. And then there was bruises all over my arms. Like there were a lot of bruises that never came out, but because they were so internal. So I was bruised in almost every place on my body. Yeah, so there wasn't really, my back was all completely bruised. My lady area was bruised, very bad. My butt was bruised. My hands were so bruised, you could tell that like he had hit my hands. And I think they were able to say that I had, I guess at one point put my hands up to cover my face. So you could see the punching, yeah. Yeah, defensive wounds, which he kept saying that was me fighting him back. Like, yeah. He was like, those aren't defensive wounds, those were her hitting me. And I'm like, you are 6'5", 200 pounds. I am 5'3", and 115. Like, there's no correlation of what I could ever do to you. Those photos proved a lot for me, so I'm really glad that because that's where they were able to get him on, like, more than likely to produce death. So if they would have, I mean, even just domestic violence gets a pregnant woman, misdemeanor, slap on the wrist, whatever, don't do it again. Then maybe parole, or maybe you get a couple years community service. So obviously the whole DA's office is like, we cannot charge him with that. So that's why they started taking those forensic photos of me. They had me taking photos of myself every day, like having people take pictures of me. And I would just have to continue sending them in. That way they knew that, like, it wasn't just something, like, I don't know. But they needed all the proof they could. That way they could file more than likely to produce death. And he got 2 charges of it because I was pregnant. Domestic violence is very hard in Oklahoma to press charges because people come to me all the time. They message me and they're like, he only got assault and battery misdemeanor. And I'm like, I truly believe if 1, those forensic photos wouldn't have been taken, and 2, if it would not have blown up on the media like it did, they would have tried not to charge him like that. But it was so in the spotlight for so long, obviously they had to do something because they would have burned down to the ground if he only got 5 years, 10 years. Yeah, so I did not love because I go back, now I'm at OU, after everything, everyone just kind of knows me as that girl. So, I bartend, so girls will come up to me, they're like, oh my God, I love you so much, you're so strong, and I'm like, I just want everyone to just leave it alone, he's in prison, he's gone. So, we go through a lot. It took 2 years to finally get to trial. It was just constant stupid court dates, VPO hearings, stuff like that. He kept trying to contact me. He did get to me at one point and was like, I would never do that to you again. I was very pregnant at that time. I was very hormonal. I just was so out of whack with everything that I believed him. Kind of talked for a little bit, then I was like, no. I just knew that there were so many people backing me and so many people watching every move I made. I was like, if I even get seen with you, I was like, this is going to completely go the opposite way. After that, there was never any contact. Did he get arrested for contacting me?
No, but the bond went up.
The bond went up. They raised his bond pretty significant.
Yeah.
He had an ankle monitor on, and he didn't know that, so he had to check in every day. He didn't know that the officer saved those photos. So he would post captions with the photos. That blonde bitch did this to me. That blonde bitch is going to get what she deserves. I didn't touch anything. I didn't lay a hand on her. All these things. Well, that officer kept track of those. He printed out every time, and he took them to trial. He had no remorse. He'd tried apologizing to me so many times, and I just was like, you're not sorry. I know you're not. Yeah, you're sorry you got caught, and you're sorry that people don't love you anymore. People don't think you're just some frat guy that goes to OU. That's cool. I'm like, everyone knows that you're a monster. That's why you're sorry. Trial comes around. Had Steele, obviously. He did not come. Thank you. I actually named him Steele because I told my mom. I was like, oh my God, he's made of steel. And she was like, oh, that's a cute name. And I was like, oh, that is a cute name. I obviously gave him my dad's last name. Did not put Gage on. His attorney was like, why didn't you put him on the birth certificate? Are you sure it's his kid? I'm like, I don't want him to ever be paired with him. I'm like, this is mine. Gage just had some night with me and then whatever. So trial comes around. It's a week-long thing. I think was I up there the first day or the second day? I think the first day I didn't go up there. I think it was just opening statements and stuff. And then they called me to the stand. So my attorney, goes into deep detail, is pulling up every text, every picture. I'm having to sit there and stare at it in front of everybody. News was standing outside the whole entire courtroom. There were people taking pictures of me, walking into the courtroom, walking out of the courtroom, sitting at the stand. I had to tell a police officer to kick one guy out because he was sitting at the door. There was windows through the door, and he's had his camera up, just videotaping me. And I'm like, okay. To the point where I'm like, this is probably not the time. I'm not going to be very happy. I don't want to be filmed right now. So I was up on the stand from lunch to close, probably 6 o'clock, with my attorney. Because there was just so much to get through. She had to go through every single little detail with me. That really ripped me apart. Because I'm like, and then I was so upset because I was only planning on doing this for one day. I was like, one full day and I'm done. Well, then his attorney had to get up and question me. He asked me maybe an hour. I think I was up there with it. He called me the wrong name. Yeah, he was the third attorney. First two attorneys dropped him because he's like, the first two, they were these brothers. They got up on the stand on the first court date and was like, this is the worst case of domestic violence we've ever seen. They just were not defending him. I'm like, God. They got up and said that way they would fire them. They're like, we don't want to deal with this. We talked to them after, and they're like, we did not. They were like, they're lunatics. We do not want to represent that family. So then he gets some other guy. He dies from COVID, and he was a damn good attorney. If you look him up, he was top 10 in Oklahoma. Yeah, he was a good attorney, but he died from COVID, and I'm like, okay, well that's what happens when you agree to represent Gage Ford. That right there, just and then he hires some old guy, 70s, you think? He's on the elevator. My friend Avery, she's such a dingbat. I love her, though. She looked at his attorney and was like, I love your cowboy hat. And I'm like, Avery, we didn't know. And then he gets up, he goes to and we're like, oh my God, this guy's his attorney? Calls me the wrong name. He got me to say Steele's birthday wrong. Because he had been like so out of like, he was just like all over the place with me. He was like, and what's the kid's birthday? And I'd said his actual due date. I had him a month early. I said his actual due date. Yeah, he was acting like I was lying about like all this stuff. So then he starts attacking me on that end. Or that I provoked him to do that was one thing. And I'm sitting there. The judge is like this. Like, just like... She jumped out and scared him. I jumped out and scared him. And that's how that happened to me. He was like, so you didn't jump out and scare him and jump on top of him. And I was like... I started, by the end, I started getting so irritated with him. I was like, I am 5'4". I physically, there is nothing I could do to take that man down unless Hulk came and injected something into me. Like, he was just so big. And so, like, just some of the things, like, I, like, busted out laughing sometimes, like, when he would say things to me, and I just look at my attorney, I'm like, there's no way this is real. Like, I thought I was going to get pounded with questions, like, I thought it was going to freak me out, but I just got irritated with him, because I'm like, one, I want this to be over. Gage is sitting there writing down on his little notepad, smiling at me, laughing at me, and he's just, like, taunting me in court. He did that the whole time. So then, trial, they put him behind me. They're like, you don't get to look at her. Like, that the judge was like, you're going to sit behind her, you don't get to see her, you don't get to look at her. So that, I did appreciate that. So then, a lot of people got up and testified. Like, my doctor, who told me I was pregnant, got up and testified for me. Another thing that his attorney had said, so I have a disease called EDS, and it's a vascular version. So it's Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. But it's the vascular version. So that's how my dad died. So I also have that disease. So his attorney was saying that I bruised that easily. So everything that he did to me was so much lighter than what it was. And I just bruise and swell up. Well, a bunch of doctors obviously got up and proved. They're like, we don't care. Like, they're like, I don't care if she has the worst disease possible and it does make her bruise. You could poke her and bruise. You still did that to her. There was, I think, 2 days of testimony. I didn't go. I was like, I'm not sitting in there. My family did, though. My family took shifts of going and sitting in there and listening and reporting back what was heard. Yes.
Y'all were there.
Yeah. And there was a huge group of us. And then the last day, his sentencing, I mean, he had, 30 people there with him? Yeah, he had his whole family there. I mean, they all came and sat right behind him. So I'm in the courtroom, and Gage's whole family had all written letters about how good of a person he was. So one by one, they all got up on the stand and said that Gage was a good person. He would give out his lunch money. I don't care if he gave out his lunch money. He still abused me. His aunt had been in an abusive relationship. She was like, I'm a domestic violence survivor, and I know that this was even-sided. And I'm like, this is how I know that you're not someone that anyone looks up to, because you're sitting there blaming the woman. And so his mom got up there crying. His dad got up there crying. His sister got up on the stand and was like, I don't really get the point. She didn't die, so what's the problem? And I was like, oh, really? Wow. So then, yeah, but did she die? No, she didn't. So what's the point? So then I had to get up and get my victim impact statement. It was pretty long. But at the end, I turned around to his family and I asked them, I was like, well, what if this was your daughter? Because I know for a fact you guys wouldn't be rallying behind the abuser. You guys would be rallying around who hurt your daughter. I mean, if you think about it, their daughter is exactly my age. We are the same age group. We're both blonde, we're both pretty. And I'm like, what would you guys do if this was your daughter? That's how I ended it. Whatever. I mean, they all look stunned that I would even say that to them. I'm like, I don't have anything left to give you. So then Gage decides that he has an apology. He gets up on the stand, he agreed to, or he said he wasn't going to testify because he knew there was nothing, because my attorney was bad, like badass. Like, she would have grilled him to the point where he probably would have started crying. Like, she scares me. I love her to death, but she scares me. And anyone that goes up against her, I know is scared of her. Her name was Abby, and then Jan. So Gage gets up there, and I'm sitting in the front row, and I'm turning around everybody. I'm like, is this real? So actually, at this point, the girl that he had dated after me, she got pregnant.
So this is the one.
So this is the car girl. She got pregnant. He ended up pushing her to the ground while she was pregnant, kicking her. His mom saw it all. So I needed her to testify for me. So I reached out to her and I was like, listen, I know what it's like to date him. If you are actually going to stay away from him, you and me can talk. So I kind of felt, it kind of made me feel better that I was there for someone that also dated him. Now I'm not sure if I don't know if I would ever change that. That's something that people ask me all the time. But she was a good person that could help me, because it wasn't just me saying this about him. I had someone else that could come in and say, yes, he's like this, but he was much more emotionally abusive to her. I will give her that. He was more physical with me, more emotional towards her. Some of the things that I know he has said to her is some of the most heinous things I've ever heard come out of someone's mouth. I mean, it's on text. I mean, it was just horrible. So I felt for her. And he did break her down hard. And, I wanted to be there for her. I mean, 10 months apart, 11 months apart.
So was this during...
This was all during court.
So this,
yes.
First when she came,
first couple of times she came,
and then
forget you,
yes.
Time. Yeah, so it started happening more and more and more towards that time. She had came to court, and she testified against him, and I will forever be grateful for that. Because, his attorney was like, we don't have any proof that he did all these things to you. Well, then, guess what? I have a backup. Here she is. She can prove that he is like this. He was emotionally abusive towards her. Physically, sometimes. Nothing ever got to the extreme it did with me, or to her, physically with her. But he did get charged by Muskogee for domestic violence with prior pattern. So he's getting charged again. But that day he did get up and he gave an apology, but just to me. Not to her. And I think that kind of started where the drift started. Me and her we never said anything to each other about it, but she was around my family. So I sat there for maybe like 5-10 minutes before I got up and I walked out. I didn't want to hear him. I didn't care. I don't care how sorry he is. He's sitting there crying. Once he said baby steal, I lost my mind, and I knew that if I did not get out of there, I was going to say some things that I shouldn't say before he gets sentenced. So I got up and I walked out. I came back in maybe like 15 minutes later. He is still going, and I'm like, oh my God. He apologized to my mom. He apologized to my sister, my family. Was
this after he had been sentenced?
No, before.
So
he was trying to save himself.
Yeah.
And also, my other thing was the jury was pretty much all men and maybe like 2 or 3 women. And that freaked me out. I'm like, oh my God.
Well, that's not impartial.
No, but turns out they were all fathers. That helped.
That might be why.
Yeah, so... Yes, and so I trusted Abby, so I knew what she was doing. Like, it didn't make sense at the time, but after everything happened, she was like, Allie, like, there's a reason I picked men with daughters.
That does make sense now.
Yeah.
At first I was kind of like, but not impartial, but now it makes
that's,
sense.
like, Abby and Jan, I will always owe my life to. Like, and they were just very good attorneys. Like, they were always texting me, calling me, making sure I'm okay, keeping me completely updated. Like, I never had questions. But after Gage got up, the girl got mad. She was like, why wouldn't he apologize to me? And my friend Jasmine, she's very snappy. She wasn't the biggest fan of this girl. And she was like, this isn't about you. She's like, this is about Allie. And she's like, I don't think Allie cares if he apologized to her. That's not what she wanted to hear today. I didn't care. I didn't want to know. I just knew that he was just trying to get out of it, and it was never a sincere apology. So, the jury's gone for an hour or two. We went to lunch. Yeah, we went to lunch, came back, they were ready. We actually saw the judge out in the street, but we couldn't say anything to him, but he was like I think he knew. So he got, so that the first thing what they charged him with, like the pre-sentencing or whatever, he got charged with 76 years. So in my head, I'm like, that's a lot. He's not, like all of us, like I'm sitting here talking to my mom, I'm like, he's not going to get 76 years. I'm like, first of all, we're in the state of Oklahoma, domestic violence isn't taken seriously. I mean, that's obviously what they're going for, but we didn't think that he would get charged for trying to kill me or steal. We had talked about, we just thought it would just be, we thought they would take off one. One or the other, because there was two prior, or could kill, or more than likely to produce death, and then there was a misdemeanor for a pregnant woman. So I'm like, they're gonna lower this thing. And so they come back and they charge him exactly with what they charged him with, except for the fact that he gets out after 40. He has to serve 85% before he's...
So it's 34 years.
34 years. So he's 34 years, and then he's eligible for parole. So before they actually give him parole, he's still in.
So he can't.
And then he can't leave. No, he can't file for anything before 34 years. So I know that takes a little bit longer. Yeah. So I mean, it's a couple year thing. So I'm thinking he'll probably just serve it, because I also don't know what he's doing in jail. He is appealing everything. I mean, that but they were one vote away from life without parole. But that was just one thing that, like, we were all stunned. Like, when they charged him with both counts and the judge was like, it blew my expectations. I was expecting 20 years, maybe. But even after he gets out, he's on very high parole for another 40 years. I also don't know if they're waiting for this appeal thing to be over, because I'm also in the process of suing his insurance company. I don't know if I can really talk about it, but it's more on the it's more civil. It's nothing like against like Gage personally. I think even if he was out, any of that, I don't think I would ever want his money, because I just know it's not coming from a good place. So
it takes away.
A lot of it has to do with him being intoxicated that night. I think that's really all I can talk about until it's done. But it's something to do with him being intoxicated and his family knowing about everything that he did to me from the beginning. So it's kind of more of a stab towards his parents, because they did get up there and say it's my fault. And so I'm like, this has nothing to do with Gage. I'm like, but you guys texted me horrible, heinous things. You guys didn't save me when you guys knew something was happening to me. So he got arrested that day. The cop was this little old white guy. He had this little cowboy hat. He had sat there with his hands on his handcuffs as soon as that jury walked in. Once he read off the sentence, he got the biggest smile on his face, went up to him, looked me dead in the eyes, and made his handcuffs as tight as possible and winked at me. That was more satisfactory than I've ever had in my life. I was sitting there and I was like, it's over. Every news station possible is just standing out there. I think I talked to one, and that's because the lady had messaged me and she asked me I was her last story. And so before she moved to another news station, right? No, she's doing, okay. Well, she just completed, but I was her last story. So no, it's Bonnie Campo. Well, she convinced me to go on for the bill that I was kind of the face of it, the 865 bill. Yes. The changing the domestic violence stuff. Kind of letting abusers off the hook easier. There were some things that, like domestic violence with prior pattern, domestic violence against a pregnant woman, those were all becoming very low misdemeanors. So obviously say no. That was my thing. No, the charges need to stay the same. All these things. So then that's kind of where I kind of started getting a lot of haters, because, Oklahoma, like, there was just a lot coming into it. There was a lot of misinformation. There was a lot of things with it. And they were like, this girl doesn't know what she's talking about. this is actually better for victims. And I'm like, I'm literally the face of this bill. I am a victim. I know what I'm talking about. So that was kind of like where it kind of started with me. And then that's when people started reaching out to me. So I went and spoke at the frat that he was at. I went and spoke to their whole entire frat, gave them the signs, and then I spoke. No. Oh, yeah. Everyone was there. I mean, they all still kind of like, not scared of me, but I think they don't know how to approach me because I think they just, a lot of them knew what was happening, but they didn't say anything. So I would never blame them. I tell them that. I'm like, I would never blame you. Like, I was like, I know I asked you guys for help sometimes, but I was like, you guys did what you could. And then I talked to my sorority because obviously our philanthropy is domestic violence. And then I talked to a high school in Missouri.
Oh.
Yeah, I drove to Missouri. And then I talked to a church, me and Papa's church, Cornerstone Church. I talked to all their kids, and I actually had more little boys come up to me than girls and tell me some of the things that they were going through. And that broke my heart, yeah. So it was more towards kind of middle school and high school, which is the little boys that were coming up to me, telling me the things that were going on, broke me. I mean, like, I just drove home in silence. I was like, I didn't think that my story would reach boys. I thought it was, like, people were like, oh, she's a girl's girl, blah, blah, blah. Like, that was the whole thing. And then all these boys kind of started reaching out to me, telling me the situations they had been through. So I had kind of switched my thing to talking more about men than women because so when I spoke to the high school, I gave the statistics with women, but I also went more in depth with men because I feel like they're not seen when it comes to domestic violence because it can happen to men. My presentation was geared towards more boys' side of it because they obviously don't come out as much because to the outside world, men are supposed to be men.
And they don't want to be
They're strong. They don't want to be seen as less. And I'm like, that does not make you less. I still have guys message me. I had a girl message me a couple days ago, and she's like, I'm pregnant at 19. I don't know what to do. So it's been kind of more recently that girls have been reaching out, and I haven't really posted much about it. I've kind of switched. I've kind of gone back to like normal life. So back to the state question 805. It basically says that 805 will use violent crimes list from January 20 and will not include domestic violence and battery by strangulation, domestic assault and battery, domestic abuse and battery with a dangerous weapon, and domestic assault and battery with a deadly weapon. So those were not going to be classified as dangerous crimes. And I'm like, it literally says deadly weapon in it. Like, it literally says deadly weapon. And that's another, they didn't want to charge him with deadly weapon because they're like, his hands don't count as a deadly weapon. They were like, sorry. No, you can tell that there are fist marks under me. Like, you know that those came from hands and not. So after that, I did speak at a little questionnaire thing, like a panel a couple weeks ago, or no, not a couple weeks, a couple months ago. But I guess now my life is a lot better. I'm finally I'm moving past it, but I do still like to talk about it, just not to the point where it's blowing up on social media. But I do kind of want to start my own podcast about life after domestic violence. Like, obviously, I'll get into details about things that happened to me during the relationship, but I just want people to know, like, once you get out, it does get better. Because I didn't think it was ever going to get better. I just thought everyone was going to know me as the pregnant girl. She had a baby with an abuser, blah, 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 like all this stuff. And now, like, I'm back in college. My 2-year-old is huge and perfect and so funny. And I mean, he brings so much life to everyone, like, around him. Like, and I know at some point, you know, a lot of people ask me all the time, like, what are you going to tell him? Like, Steele. And I'm like, I'll tell him first of all, when he's old enough. And I'm like, second of all, I'm not going to go into details, but by the time he gets to that age, the internet's going to be insane. Everything is going, like, somehow, like, where I'm going to have something popping up behind me telling my whole entire life story. Would not go with him, but you can go do that on your own. I don't want to go see him. But if he makes that decision, that's him. And if he wants to just get him in a room and beat him up, maybe, I don't care. Steele can do whatever he wants when he turns 18, but I just wanted to make sure he was an adult before Gage ever got out, because Gage did not want to sign. He was like, I want to be on the birth certificate. I want this. Like, I want to be there. Like, I want to be Steele's dad. I want parental rights. I was looking at him like, are you crazy? Like, why would I ever let you around my kid? And something that had happened, I went to class maybe a year after, they have to talk about like who to call, like what hotline to call, all this stuff, and started talking about the domestic violence hotline. And I'm sitting in the back. I have my hood on because I'm like, for one thing, I don't want to get noticed. And my name is Allison, not Allie. So they go Allison Stevens, not Allie Stevens. And Allie Stevens was way more known than Allison. So I was very grateful that my name was Allison. But the teacher didn't realize, nobody in the class realized. But after she got on talking about the domestic violence hotline, she was like, you don't want to happen what happened with that girl a couple years ago. It was more because like it kind of made everyone more aware of how important the domestic violence hotline was, so I wasn't like upset. But then she had asked me to take my hood off. Well, then she quickly realized that I was that girl in her class, and her face got so red. And then after class, she held me after and she was like, I am so sorry. And I was like, you know what? I agree that the domestic violence hotline is very important. And that was kind of my message also, was if you can't get a hold of the domestic violence hotline, if you're scared to do the domestic violence hotline, call me. So I had all my social media like very open, public, like just so I knew if people were messaging me. I mean, I helped, I'd say five girls actually leave domestic violence relationships, California, all over the United States. If I can turn it around and make it a good thing and like people not see me as that girl, like, I'm just trying to flip it, the script. I had to want help. And obviously it took me forever to want help, and that almost got me killed. So that's why I'm so strong on advocating like the hotline and like getting help and like talking to someone that, even if you don't have family around, like just tell someone you're in a bad situation, go to the cops. At first it kind of felt like I had to be in the spotlight. Like I had to be that girl. Well, then once kind of people started reaching out to me, I'm like, holy crap, people look up to me. People need me to do this. So then I kind of like flipped it in my own head. I'm like, you don't have to be that person, but that's kind of what you got thrown into. So that's kind of what I think was meant for me to do, is to help other people get out of these situations. And so I flipped it in my own head, and now I just love helping other people. Like, they know I'm always going to fight for them. I think if I wasn't pregnant, I don't know if I would have coped as well, but I knew I had read up on, being pregnant. And I know the baby can feel like what you feel. So I felt like I had to be strong for him. And so then once I was strong for him, I was being strong for myself. And then it just kind of went on and on. So like when I got to trial, obviously I was very anxious and nervous, but it didn't feel as bad because I knew I was doing it for Steele and our safety, and not just because I had something against him, and saving other girls from Gage, because he took his next shot at the next girl immediately. I knew I had to protect everyone else around me. That way everyone else was safe. So that's kind of how I coped better than I would if I wasn't pregnant. I don't know how it would have been if I wasn't pregnant, and I don't know what my life would be like right now. But I'm glad it's this way and not the other way. Nothing that happens to you is your fault. Nothing that no matter the words they say to you, whether they mean it or not, it's not your fault. Whether they lay a hand on you, it's not your fault. I think the next thing would be finding someone, even if it's, again, someone random like me, reaching out and just talking about it helps so much than keeping it all bottled inside and hiding because you're scared. Now, if you are obviously scared for your life, I would reach out to the domestic violence hotline. That would be the first place I would look, because they have better resources than I do or any of us do. Even if you call me, there's nothing I can really honestly do besides talk to you and tell you that whatever happens, it's not your fault. And you're definitely not alone. I realized that very quickly, that I was not alone. Now, there were days that I would lay in bed and I felt like I was the loneliest person in the world, but I looked at it and I'm like, wait, no, I have the whole world backing me. And even if it's just one person, you're still not alone in it. And like, there were so many times I did want to go back, and I did go back. And I don't want to say it's okay to go back, but it was his fault for doing that to me. I never thought I was strong enough to leave, but everyone is strong enough to leave that person, and life is better after.
There's a couple of apps that we wanted to talk about that will give you a little more resources if you need. There's one called One Love. It was designed by researchers at the Johns Hopkins University School of Nursing in collaboration with the One Love Foundation. And this app enables users to determine if they are in an abusive relationship or if the relationship they're currently in carries a risk of turning abusive. So if you're not sure what a red flag looks like, this is a really good app for you. So an assessment on the safety of relationships is made after the users answer a range of questions in a survey. The app is then able to rate the danger level from low to extreme. In addition to providing this assessment, the app can then be used to create a safety plan. In this context, a safety plan is a strategy of action that users can implement after an incident of abuse. It helps you figure out what to do next. You can download this app, One Love, and help you determine where to go from there. There is also an app called Aspire News. Many individuals experiencing domestic violence will often feel like they feel too unsafe to locate resources. For example, maybe they're concerned that their partner will look over their shoulder at their phone or look through their internet history. And so that's why Aspire News app is so effective, because it helps hide important information. The platform looks like a daily news site. They have carefully hidden in the help section a list of resources for domestic violence victims. The resources can be notified via a simple click of a button, making it easier than ever to get help in an emergency situation. It's a really cool deal. So if you think you have somebody watching your every move, this basically just looks like a news app. You download it to your phone and go into the help section. You can find your resources there. I just think that's really cool that they have disguised this app.
No amount of time spent with a person translates to a quality of relationship. That is not true. I don't care if you've been together 60 years. If you spent 60 years punching each other in the face, it was a bad relationship.
Yeah.
I can tell you this with absolute certainty. Abusive relationships end one of two ways. You leave or you die. There's no middle.
Yeah.
I've run too many of those calls. Domestic violence is not a joke, and there's not enough being done about it to end it. You have to end it.
Yeah.
Until we can get better resources and better laws in place, you're the answer. Pick up your things, put your kids in the car, and go. If you can't get away, call 911. Someone like me, or if you live in Tulsa, it could be me, will show up, and I will do everything that I can to help you get out of that situation. And I know there are hundreds of first responders, thousands of first responders that think just like I do.
On average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. During 1 year, this equates to more than 10 million women and men.
1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence, intimate partner contact sexual violence, and or intimate partner stalking, with impacts such as injury, fearfulness, post-traumatic stress disorder, use of victim services, contraction of sexually transmitted diseases, or etc.
1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence by an intimate partner. This includes a range of behaviors, slapping, shoving, pushing, and in some cases might not be considered domestic violence.
1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men have been injured by an intimate partner.
1 in 10 women have been raped by an intimate partner. Data is unavailable on male victims.
1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of severe physical violence, beating, burning, strangling by an intimate partner in their lifetime.
1 in 7 women and 1 in 18 men have been stalked by an intimate partner during their lifetime to the point in which they felt very fearful or believed that they or someone close to them would be harmed or killed.
On a typical day, there are more than 20,000 phone calls placed to domestic violence hotlines nationwide.
The presence of a gun in a domestic violence situation increases the risk of homicide by 500%.
Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crime.
Women between the ages of 18 to 24 are most commonly abused by an intimate partner.
19% of domestic violence involves a weapon.
Domestic victimization is correlated with a higher rate of depression and suicidal behavior.
Only 34% of people who are injured by their intimate partners receive medical care for their injuries.
19.3 million women and 5.1 million men in the United States have been stalked in their lifetime. 60% of female stalking victims and 43% of men reported being stalked by a current or former intimate partner.
Among felony assaults, defendants charged with family violence in state courts, 84% had at least one prior arrest for either a felony or a misdemeanor, not necessarily for family violence, and 73% had been previously convicted of some type of felony or misdemeanor, not necessarily family violence.
A study of intimate partner homicides found that 20% of victims were not the intimate partners themselves, but family members, friends, neighbors, or persons who intervened, law enforcement responders, or bystanders.
Of the nearly 500,000 men and women in state prisons for a violent crime in 1997, 15% were there for a violent crime against a family member.
About 90% of offenders in state prisons for family violence had injured their victim. 28% of the victims of family violence were killed.
72% of all murder-suicides involve an intimate partner. 94% of the victims of these murders are female.
1 in 15 children are exposed to intimate partner violence each year, and 90% of these children are eyewitnesses to the violence. If you are in need of support for domestic violence, you can go to www.thehotline.org, where you can live chat, you can text START to 88788, or call 1-800-799-SAFE. That's 1-800-799-7233.
Or, of course, you can always call 911.
You've reached the end of our episode. All suspects are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Join Raven next time on the Sirens Podcast.